Guys, Carrie for the original season 3 episode 14, A Streetcar Named Desire, and obviously was really looking forward to this episode. I look forward to the originals every week, but even more so this week because of course it was gonna be a crossover with the Vampire Diaries, and the way the Vampire Diaries end especially, it was like I cannot wait to see how this episode is going to play out. And not only was this a very satisfying crossover, like this was kind of what I wanted the Vampire Diaries crossover to be, because Stefan did contribute to this plot a ton. It also was by far the best episode of the season. I love this episode. Some much needed closure to a lot of the characters were in this episode, which I really enjoyed. But let's just get into this episode. There's a lot to get into. More than usual, honestly. I know my review's usually 30 minutes, but this one's probably going to be a little bit longer because I have a lot to say about this episode. But let's just get into it. Basically, we start with Aurora and Aya talking. Aya says, give me the gun, and she'll give her what she wants. And Aurora says that she has what she wants. And Aya says that Elijah's her sire, so she can't let her kill him because of that. And we know that, of course, the attack after last week with Aurora, she tried to kill Elijah. But Aurora says killing Elijah is the only way to end her brother's torment. And that if they kill, Elijah, then they'll be able to kill Klaus. They'll be able to kill Klaus because Klaus, like I said, would be broken without Elijah. If Elijah wasn't around, Klaus he wouldn't be able to function. He wouldn't, and he needs Elijah. Even when him and Elijah were at each other's throats, he still needed Elijah. That's just how it is. And even though sometimes they might not agree, that's just how it is. So Aya says they can end the sire lines, and she asks for a piece of her hair, then calls in the witch Cynthia to guide her. She says she sees Tristan, all of a sudden, and I really like the way this was done. This is kind of her in her little like fantasy world. She sees Tristan, he hugs her and says he missed her. Aurora says that she failed him, but he says it's all right, and he says it is horrific. He says Aya's witches made a place and put his mind here, so while his body drowns, he can breathe and relax, which, as we know, his body is drowning, but obviously there has to be somewhere where he can still survive because he's immortal. So Aurora says that she will burn the world and drain the oceans to find him. Tristan says that he believes it, and you can tell how much Aurora cares about him. I mean, that's how it's always been. And she says that they have front row seats to the show, and right away things are very crazy here. So I really like the way this was done. Freya, meanwhile, isn't happy to hear that from Elijah that he daggered Rebecca, which it seems like this kind of came out of nowhere, but I'm glad Elijah told her because this was something he just needed to say. And they talk about how now they worry about friend or foe, and she says that they have few friends, and they don't have many friends, but they have a lot of foes, so that's a good thing. But then Klaus walks in with Stefan, introduces him as an old friend, and of course that worries Freya because of the fact that if there are more friends, there are more people for them to go after, and with friends, they'll come after them, so this is even more dangerous now. And like I said, I really like how Stefan contributed to this plot, because obviously Freya's main goal is to get him the hell out of there, because that's obviously what she wants to do. So Davina tells Marcel that she's almost ready to work the unlinking spell, and Marcel says, what if it kills him? He says that this is precarious since they're using Jackson's heart, and Davina says that she needs to save Marcel and Josh, then Cole, and I know some people have said that Marcel is, definitely not working with them, but I feel like he's just doing this to please Davina. That's why he's doing it. So if you please Davina, then what this will do is, get her on his side, and that will get him to eventually join Klaus. Because again, he's on their side. Even we know that. I mean, we know from that one scene. So basically, Freya looks at the mark of the Phoenix sword, and, as we know, she saw the mark there, and Stefan tells Freya that he dated her sister once, which, I don't know if he's talking about Rebecca or who he's talking about. I don't remember if Stefan and Rebecca dated. If they did, I don't remember. But she says, great story, then says the Huntress is dead, but will regenerate, and he says the wound is a beacon, but he says it's been a rough week, and of course, their main mission was for Freya to somehow save him, and Freya puts paste on him and says that will mask the signal. He asks why she's bum rushing out the door. Of course, we know why, because obviously she's terrified of him being there, because obviously she knows what could happen. So Klaus tells Elijah that Marcel is the friend betraying him, and Freya tells, he doesn't trust Marcel at all right now. And definitely, like I said, I think Marcel is still working with them, but Klaus obviously doesn't think that. So Freya tells Stefan about the Strix, Elijah's crazy ex, and the Sireline spell, which, again, this was very similar to the Vampire Diaries scene where Klaus and, Stefan caught up. Very much like the scene between Freya and Stefan. I've heard people say that Freya and Stefan have very good chemistry. Yeah, I would say that. And in fact, if Stefan was to come on the originals, I definitely think that Freya would be his love interest. I could definitely see that happening. Because like I said, from the looks of the Vampire Diaries Flash Forward, it definitely seems like this could be the last season that Caroline's going to end up there, and I think Stefan will as well, so we'll have to see. And I have to say, Stefan worked very well in the show. Like, Klaus worked well in the Vampire Diaries, but it felt more like a crossover. This felt like Stefan was there all along. Like, he really feels like he belongs here. So Klaus says they will come for them, and once the sire line is broken, Klaus tells Elijah he can use Aurora's head as a footstool, and basically Hayley calls and Elijah takes it. He says the Crescent Wolves found Aurora, and a wolf pads up to the house where Aurora was. Hayley morphs and then goes inside. Hayley looks around, then Klaus and Elijah are close by. Hayley spots a door, then finds Lucian desiccated in the closet, which I knew Lucian was going to come back into the plot at some point because we haven't seen Lucian in a long time, and I thought he was just gone, but I'm glad that they had him back here because we know that we didn't really know what he was doing if he was working with Aurora, but this episode confirms that he definitely is working with Klaus, with Klaus's side, with the Michelsons. He definitely is working with them. Klaus and Elijah find Aya, and she's got Aurora's gun, and Elijah says that there's justice to creator being destroyed by creation, and obviously, he's trying to say that, the justice is that she's gonna kill him, so basically, Hayley then wakes Lucian, who says, get Klaus out of here. Cynthia the Witch chants, and Klaus and Elijah wake in Tristan's mind palace, where they stay for most of the episode, and this is when the episode just gets so good. The episode was already great, but this is when it even gets better. I love these scenes here. Aurora says the funny faces he makes when he's surprised, and Tristan says it's good to see them both, and obviously Klaus wants to know why they're there, because all of a sudden they've just turned up here. And, a few seconds ago, they were just back in the regular world. Why all of a sudden are they in this mind palace? They don't understand that. So Aurora says that it's representational magic and that it's not actually happening, and Klaus says find what represents them. They get out, and Tristan says try it, but the Strix Coven's working on breaking the binding spell that holds the vamps to sire lines, and Tristan says that their fates will no longer be tied. Obviously, they're trying to unlink them, and Aurora says then Aya will use the White Oak to kill them both once the sire lines are torn away, because obviously the connection is Aurora is sire to Klaus, and Aya is sire to Elijah. If they break that sire line, then they won't have any, doubts or, regret killing them because they'll be unlinked. So Tristan says they will die alone. Klausen looks around the objects in the room. There are paintings, ninja swords, and then Aurora holds one to his neck, and that was crazy. I mean, just knowing the power she has over him. She laughs as they are definitely not his. He spins and puts one to her neck. He says when he's free, he's going to cut her in half, and you know that Klaus is definitely going to kill Aurora. I mean, he even said in last week's episode that when the next chance he gets, he's going to kill Aurora. That's just how it's going to be. And, of course, he has a lot of reasons for killing her. What happened with Cammy, which Aurora does ask in this episode. She says right after that, she asks about Cammy because, of course, she's the reason for Cammy, and you can tell that they are physically and mentally torturing them. I mean, they're saying that every consequence they did, everything that they've done to them, everything that's led them here, I mean, this really was crazy. And Aurora and Tristan have always been dangerous, but this was a new kind of torture, and this really was hard to watch at points. Elijah paces, and Tristan says Aurora designed the room, so that should help him. And Tristan says he's there because his people love him, and Elijah's there because they loathe him. And Tristan says that they beg them to lock themselves away until the prophecy passes. Elijah says, spare me the deadbeat dad lecture. And Tristan says he should be grateful for the years he's been compelled to play him. And Tristan says if anyone is foolish enough to fight for him, they will die. And basically, Tristan's basically saying, look, you come after me, you're gonna die. It's that simple. You can't beat me, and I'm gonna kill you. So Marcel tells Hayley that they can't trust Lucian because they don't know if he's on their side or not, and says he didn't know that they were going to take Klaus and Elijah, because in fact he did take them, and we thought that he was on their side, but he wasn't. And she rants about Jackson's heart, because obviously it's gone. He says that heart saved her life. Lucian says that and of course she doesn't know that Marcel's the one that took the heart. She doesn't know about that, and Lucian, and I like what Marcel's saying here. He's trying to tell her that, look, if that heart that it's gone, it saved your life. It stopped you from being killed, because remember, it was supposed to kill Hayley, but it killed Jackson, and we know now that obviously Jackson, was the one that was killed. It wasn't Hayley, and because of that, it kind of saved her. And I like that Marcel's trying to give her some pros when she's really focused on the cons. And I don't blame her. I mean, this was someone she really loved, and after he died, she realized she was in love with him. Lucian then says they have to stop an execution. He says Davina's in over her head, and says I will test the desiring spell by firing in Klaus's heart, and that means Lucian and Marcel both can die, and Davina clearly is not aware of those consequences. She's focused on unlinking Klaus, so that way she'll just kill him. That's obviously what she wants, and because that's what Aya told her to do. So Lucian says if Davina fails, both of them will die with Klaus, and Stefan walks in, says that makes three of them because, Klaus will die, Lucian will die, Marcel can die, Stefan will die. That's just how it's going to be. And because, he's part of their sire line. And if you remember, you kill Klaus, you kill everyone. Stefan dies, Damon dies, everybody dies. That's just how it is. Klaus is the number one. So Aurora taunts Klaus and shows him a carving and says maybe this little white knight represents you. Aurora says it's nice to see how he protects those he cares about, the few of them that he does care about, because he clearly doesn't care about a lot of people, which we know he does, but again, she's torturing him. She brings up Cammy and he threatens her, because the second that she says Cammy, he's just thinking, you're the one that did this to her. You're the one that, made her the way she is now. And if Aurora hadn't done this to Cammy, Cammy would not be the way she is right now. And obviously, he knows things are complicated between the two of them, but it really is all of Aurora's fault. Despite the fact that Cammy is acting very differently as a vampire, it is Aurora's fault because she's the one that killed her. So basically, just the way that was done, he threatens her. Aurora says keep taunting him and says that King is the greatest and weakest piece of the board. She says when the sire line fails, they will race to put White Oak in his heart, and obviously that's the goal, is if they, kill him if the sire line, once they unlink everyone, they'll put the White Oak in him and everyone else is gonna die. So Aurora says his family will let him die because they're his eternal burden, and Stefan looks at Blueprint, and that's true. His family's gonna let him die because he's the one that sired them, and he's the one that's turned them into vampires, got him in all these troubles. And while that's not necessarily true, I think she does have a point there. I mean, he's the one that made them into all these troubles. I mean, if Elijah wasn't a vampire, he probably wouldn't be going through as much. If Hayley wasn't the way that she was, things like that. If Stefan wasn't a vampire, not much would be happening to him. So Stefan looks at blueprints, and Lucian argues with them. Lucian says that these vampires are 7 times his age, and Marcel says that the Strix from all over are flying in to guard it, and Lucian says that he's the leader and calls a meeting. Hayley says that Freya figured out how to get them out, and I like that Stefan doesn't necessarily know if he can trust Lucian, but, he knows obviously that Lucian's not good, he knows obviously Lucian's bad news, so Lucian says he's the leader and calls a meeting. Hayley says Freya figured out how to get them out and just needs a power source. She says she needs to channel Lucian since he's the oldest vampire around, and Lucian babbles, and Freya snaps his neck with magic, and that was crazy when she did that. Obviously, he's not dead, but she still snapped his neck because they just needed him to, be unconscious for a little bit. So Marcel asks how the three of them kept all those vampires occupied, and Stefan says just get us through the front door, because obviously that's the main goal, is just to stop this unlinking spell from happening. Stefan and Hayley are in the trunk of Marcel's car. She looks at a picture of Hope, and this was a really great scene with Stefan and Hayley. We really realize how similar these two really are, and I don't really think I saw it, but honestly, in this part, you really do see how similar they really are. We see a picture of Hope. Stefan says that she's cute, asks if that's why she's there. Hayley says yes, that's why she's in the trunk with a stranger and doesn't want her to grow up without a father. Stefan says depends on the father and says his brother had to protect him from theirs, and, basically, obviously, we know their father was very dangerous, but of course, that's nothing compared to Michael. I mean, as bad as their father was, Michael was way worse, and, Julian was bad as well. I'm not talking about Julian. Julian's not the one I'm talking about. I'm talking about their other father. Hayley says that she never understood the brother bond until she met Klaus and Elijah. She didn't know how close they were, and, she didn't know that they were brothers, and she says they hurt each other, but are also vicious, protecting one another. He shows her a picture on his phone of Caroline, and Hayley says that she snapped her neck once, and Klaus had a thing for her. Stefan says that she's toughened up since then, and now she's way different. If you remember, that's how Caroline turned into a vampire, that Klaus was her sire, and, Klaus sired her. Hayley snapped her neck, if you remember, because Hayley was on the first season of the Vampire Diaries, if you remember. I believe she was on the first season. I can't remember when Hayley was on, but I know she was on the Vampire Diaries before. But again, just like the Vampire Diaries scene, you really do see that these two have changed a lot, and you really see them catching up, which I like watching. She asks if Caroline is why he's there. He says they both have their reasons, and he's not going to tell her why he's there, because he's there to really just get away. And Marcel pulls up, they wave him through and open the gate. He drives inside, and Tristan then plays the violin. Aurora says look at them and asks how can a woman love either of them, and again, the torture that she's putting them through is crazy. Marcel tells her if the spell goes wrong, I will just straight up kill Klaus, and he and Josh will both die when they do it, and Davina doesn't seem to believe him. Davina thinks that, this is not true. Davina says that Klaus had his turn, and reminds him how he was the one who wanted her to break the sire line 2 years ago, and now she has, that this was something that Klaus told her to do. The circumstances were much different then, because if you remember at that point, Marcel was the villain of the show. Remember in season one where Marcel was like completely against Klaus and it was like a struggle for power? Things were much different then. If Marcel died at that point, then he wouldn't have cared because obviously Marcel wanted the upper hand, if you remember. So now things are much different though, because Marcel is an ally of his. Marcel is someone that he's working with, and it'll mean a lot to him. Marcel tells her if the spell goes wrong, I will kill Klaus. Oh, I just read this. So Davina says he protect her by having her shunned, and she knows he'll always protect her, even if she hates him for it, and that he shouldn't be worried. Davina says that he deserves to be free of Klaus, and says they all do, and she says trust her so she can do this, and she just isn't really thinking about this. She's just doing this because Aya told her to. And I don't think she's trusting Aya over Marcel. I think this is something that she personally just really wants to do, and she's trying to tell Marcel that I'm going to find a way to save you no matter what happens. And she tells Marcel he's the only family that she has, and asks if they're in this together. She says she can do it, no doubt, if he's with her. Marcel sighs, basically knowing he can't get through to her, even though he knows of the consequences. He realizes, you know what? If she's not going to listen, if she's going to be stubborn, I can't really do anything. I should just let her do it. And him trying to tell her a bunch of other times she's not going to listen. It's clear that she has her own agenda and she's not going to listen to him. So Seven tells Hayley that his life is in her hands and says, let's make this count. He pulls the clay off his hunter's wound, and Raina walks through the woods, then stops and turns the other way. And Raina being back, I mean, this was crazy. I didn't think that Raina was going to be in this episode, but this was crazy. And of course, she's still after Stefan. So Davina says she's ready. Marcel says, take your time, but Aya presses her to hurry, says they've all waited long enough. Davina says the unsired heart will charge the water. They have Klaus and Elijah flowing in the pool. Lucian wakes, asks if she had to tie him up. She says it will hurt. She even verveined the ropes, and she says it's going to take both their power to break into the prison and bust it open. So no matter what happens, she's going to, take them down. She's going to make sure they're tortured. Even if they don't die, they're still vervain. And Lucian flirts, says they just need a cheap motel, some wine, and says go ahead. And she starts chanting. Lucian writhes in pain, and this was crazy. Freya walks into the jail, says, find what represents you. Klaus and Elijah next are cut in real life and in the prison too. And Freya says it's starting. She now knows what's going on. Raina runs for the house. The vampires are at the gate, turn at her approach. A guard tells Aya they have an issue. Hang on one second, guys. Okay, so Aya recognized her, the Strix attack, and Elijah... Oh, I just read this. So, Freya says it's starting, Raina runs for the house, and the vampires at the gate turn her approach. A guard tells Aya that they have an issue. Elijah tells her that the chess pieces that represent them, because, they are, and Aya and the guards then go on high alert, but Raina is on a killing spree in the house. At this point, I don't know what was going to happen here. That's something I really do love. The original has always been unpredictable. I've told you guys a million times. I can never predict what's going to happen, and this was a very good example of that. So, Aya recognized her, the Strix attack, and Elijah says that it's night or nights, and Freya says decide. Marcel says they have to get Elijah and Klaus out now, and he's knocked back by magic, and again, he's trying to convince her, but she's not listening. Aurora says that she's glad she gets to watch them die, because it's what she wants. She wanted to kill these two, and she's gonna do whatever she can to make sure that they just die, because she doesn't want them alive, obviously. Ever since, this whole situation with Klaus, she's wanted them dead. So Klaus says the woman, the queens, and Freya grabs them, crushes them. Elijah comes to, starts killing witches, and he's just killing witches like crazy here. Klaus is awake too and comes at Davina, but she holds him in the air with magic. Freya says Davina is breaking the link, and now they know how dangerous this is because, again, they know what's going to happen. She's working it, and Klaus's vampires begin to burn. Freya watches Lucian in torment, and Elijah jumps in the pool to retrieve Klaus, who says he felt them leave. He says his sire line is broken. Aya has killed Raina for now, and Raina's definitely not dead, though. Raina, we know that every time she dies, she comes back, and she comes into the room. Elijah tells Aya that they're connected despite what she's done, and he says he can't let her hurt his family, and she can't hurt him anymore than she has, and Aya says she stood by him, says he betrayed and abandoned them. He says he failed her and won't forgive himself, but can't forgive this, and she says if his life was changed to a man despite his devotion, what choice would he have but to break free? And She says, end it. And I like she's trying to say, look, I have reasons to kill you. This is why I'm going to kill you. And you really need to think about this. She says, end it. He points the gun to her head. His hand shakes. She says, end it. And she says, end it or she will take that gun and kill him. A stake drives through her chest. Hayley's there holding it. She says, that's more mercy than Jackson ever got. And the fact that Hayley was the one that killed her, it makes sense. Because Aya, of course, was the one that killed Jackson. Elijah's stunned. Aya is dead. So yes, Aya's dead, which I could not get over. But you know what? It really does make sense. Hayley had a reason to kill her, and this death was definitely coming. I mean, I didn't think Aya was gonna die, but it makes sense. I mean, obviously, Hayley is being very irrational. She's really focusing on the cons, even though Marcel's trying to tell her some good things that happen out of it. She still killed Jackson, so she had it coming, definitely. And Tristan Aurora then in his mind palace, which is breaking. Tristan says it's collapsing. He tells her there's so much left to say. She says she can't lose him again. He says he loves her, then begins to choke her, basically. Which was crazy that we saw that he, basically begins to choke her. And obviously, she doesn't want to lose him again. He choke on seawater, not choke her, but choke on seawater. She holds him and cries because, obviously he knows he's drowning and he needs to get back to reality. Then Aurora wakes sobbing and Klaus is there. He says, welcome back. And this scene was not only cathartic and very much worth the wait, but it was probably my favorite scene of this entire, one of my favorite scenes of this season. This scene was awesome. She's sealed in. He says Freya did this. He says she made him realize what a monster he's been. He should have done this sooner. She says that he can't leave her there. He's breaking her up, but she begs him to kill her. And he says he won't give her the mercy, basically, that he, won't kill her. And, basically, you see that he is gonna kill her, and he says he won't give her the mercy, and says the fish will eat Tristan while the worms eat her, and says no, it was me that took everything from you. And just the fact that Aurora is finally neutralized, I mean, you knew it was coming, because when Klaus, I said it last week, when Klaus gets a chance, he's going to kill her. Now that she's not, having the upper hand, and she's not torturing him, and she's free to go, now he can kill her. And even though he didn't straight up kill her, he's still torturing her, and she still can't break free, and she's probably gonna die anyway. So just the fact that she's gone, I think is crazy, and I love the way that that was done. Amazing stuff. So happy to see Aurora gone. Not that I didn't like the character. I thought that she was a very strong villain, and she definitely had reasons for killing Klaus, but just the fact that she died, I mean, was crazy, but definitely worth the wait. And I'm not going to say that it's stupid that they did this, because it makes sense. I mean, once she killed Cammy, you knew that he was going to kill her. He just hasn't had the chance to. There have been so many times where she's gone away, and she's made it very hard for him to kill her, but now that he finally had that chance, she's done too many things to him, he just had to kill her, and I love the way that was done. Awesome stuff, and it does show that Klaus is not a softie. I've heard a lot of people say that Klaus is not the way he used to be. Yeah, Klaus is no longer a villain, but he'll still kill when he wants to. I mean, whoever dies, they're just gonna fucking die. That's just how it is. I mean, Klaus will always have the upper hand, and it's just how it is. So, Davina wakes at Marcel's place and she's mad. She says she asked him to do one thing, believe in her and choose her, and he didn't. And, she didn't, he did not listen to her. Davina says that he didn't. Marcel says he's always on her side. He says sometimes the things you want aren't worth the price you pay, and that's true. I mean, she really didn't think of the consequences. He just stopped her from making a huge mistake. Davina says tell yourself that and says enjoy your freedom. She storms out, and I really feel this is going to break the bond between Davina and Marcel. I mean, this has been one of the best bonds in the show, but now I feel like it's broken because he didn't listen to her, he didn't do what she wanted, and obviously she's really upset about that. So Stefan then waits in the cemetery for Klaus after he bricked her up, and Klaus asks if Stefan will do the right thing by her, and Stefan says he loves her, and he knows Klaus did once too. And again, you really do see that they both really care about Caroline. He wants to make sure that Stefan will be there for her. And like I said, despite the fact that he might not love her anymore, he'll still always care about her. I do personally think that Klaus is still in love with her, though. I feel like he is. Just the way he talks about her. He doesn't really talk about anyone else like that but Cammy. That's the only other person. And knowing that he loved Cammy, I think he's still in love with Caroline, definitely. Because Caroline's kind of what Cammy was, if you really think about it. Caroline was the one that made him, not as villainous as he was. He was villainous, but when he started to get closer with her, he was no longer villainous, and I've always wanted Klaus and Caroline together. I would be fine if they got together, and if she comes on the originals next season, definitely those two should get together. So Stefan grabs his bag, says he should thank Hayley, and she says she cares about him for some reason. He says do right by her, and I thought there was kind of a funny scene where he says, that he cares about her for some reason, but basically he says do right by her, and Klaus is choked up and says he's never been better. He's shaking because he can't. He's not going to tell Stefan that he killed Aurora. He's not going to tell him that. He's hiding it clearly. He shakes Stefan's hand and calls him old friend and says take care of yourself. Stefan takes off, and you knew that Stefan was going to leave at some point. I thought it was a good way to get him to leave, and I just thought they put him to really good use here, I have to say. I mean, Raina was there. We didn't know what was going to happen there. Really crazy stuff, and I think both of these episodes really showed how dangerous she is. I mean, the fact that she's after Stefan, he's gonna get Mark. We know what's gonna happen, and the journey there is definitely gonna be really crazy. So he asks what's wrong with Freya. She says that he just needs rest, and he asks what the energy he lost when got to, and basically Davina then comes back to her church attic, and then unstoppers a vial she took of Klaus and Elijah's blood, and basically now that Marcel isn't going to listen to her, she's going to do what she wants. I mean, you can tell that Davina still is going to try to unlink them, even though Marcel told her it's not the right thing. This is what she wants, and she has Cole's ashes, pours the blood into it, then chants, the wind blows, then Cole is there in the flesh. He laughs and says if he never doubted her for a second, and that's how the episode ends. So now Davina's got what she wants. She has Cole, and this is what she's wanted for a long time. So what she's going to do here, we don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, we know that this Cole is very different than Caleb. So is this Cole, is she gonna kill Klaus like she wants to? I mean, we know that Klaus obviously isn't gonna die, but I'm sure that is still her main mission. But now that the bond's broken between her and Elijah, I do think she's more interested in maybe not doing things that benefit, I'm not Elijah, I mean Marcel. I'm pretty sure she is interested in doing things that don't necessarily benefit Marcel, because now she just doesn't trust him. She doesn't think that he's going to do right by her. She thinks that he's more interested in working with Klaus, and while I think that he definitely, Klaus is very suspicious of Marcel right now. So who do you think Marcel is really working with? I'm going to say he's still working with Klaus and Elijah, because when Freya told him to not, to tell Davina this is not a good idea, he did that. And if he was not, with Freya and Klaus and Elijah, he would not have, told her that. He would just told her, do whatever the hell you want. I'm not going to stop you. But when he tried to stop her, he just couldn't do it. And that's why I think that he didn't try to stop her, because of the fact that he just knew that this is what she wanted, and he wasn't going to be able to. There was only so much he could do there. Now, that definitely is very interesting. Aurora and Aya dead. I can't believe that they both died in this episode. But I think, like I said, it definitely was the time for them to die. Now that we know that they're dead, now we can move on to other villains, which I heard that there was a villain, Cortez, coming. Do I think this is the end of Aurora and Aya? Oh, no, I do think we're going to see him again. I think it's going to be very much like the Season 2 finale, where we see, some of them battle it out. Like, for example, last year's with, the two characters, I can't think of their names right now, Klaus and Elijah's mother, and then their aunts, Dahlia versus I can't, Esther, Dahlia and Esther, that whole thing that happened in the finale. I feel like it's gonna be similar to that, but we do know there, like I said, I do have an inkling that Klaus is gonna end up going into exile, because it seems like that's where it's gonna go from the Vampire Diaries, and I definitely think that's what's gonna happen there. Like I said, I do think that Klaus still does have a thing for Caroline. I just think right now he's not really focused on that, because there's just so much else to deal with. But I wonder if he really is going to think, do I still love Caroline, things like that. And I do think the dynamic between Stefan and Caroline is going to be a little bit different, definitely. We'll have to see what happens there. That definitely is going to be interesting. Raina, we know, is very dangerous. Obviously, she's after Stefan, and we know how dangerous she really is. So what's going to happen there? We'll have to see. I'm very interested in seeing what's going to happen with that. But like I said, I'm very happy that, Aurora and Aya died. They definitely had it coming, definitely. And seeing Klaus and Elijah kill them definitely made a lot of sense. But let's talk about Hayley, because Elijah wasn't the one that killed Aya. Hayley was, and we know that Hayley clearly is not focusing on the positives of Jackson's death. She's only thinking of the negatives, and that's not a good thing at all. They need to find a way to stop her, because she's going to go on a killing spree. I really feel that the way that Hayley's acting, she's going to be very similar to how Caroline was, or how Elena was when they lost someone, that she's going to end up turning off. Now, she doesn't have a humanity switch, because of course she is, half werewolf, half, human, so she's not just going to turn off her humanity switch, obviously, but I really do feel she's going to be on this dangerous killing spree, and someone's going to have to neutralize her. Now, who's going to do that? We don't really know. We're going to have to see what's going to happen there. That definitely is going to be very interesting. I can't wait to see what happens with that. But now that Cole is back, like I said, with Davina, I don't really know what they're going to do. I mean, I'm sure her main goal is to kill Klaus, but we'll have to see what's going to happen there, if she's going to get a chance to kill Klaus. I don't know if she's going to kill Klaus, because obviously Klaus is not going to die, like I said, but I do think that Marcel's main goal is still trying to befriend her so that way he can convince her to trust Klaus, which I don't think Davina's necessarily ever going to do, but it's clearly something that Marcel wants her to do. He knows that Klaus does have her best interests. I don't think he trusts Davina, but if Davina was on his side, I do think that he would try to apologize and try to bond with her. I mean, but Klaus has wronged her so many times, it's probably going to be very hard for her to, in fact, trust Klaus again because he, like I said, has wronged her so many times. And, she's been against him since the end of season 2, so it makes sense why actually, no, since the beginning of season 2 is how long she's been against Klaus. So I definitely don't see her bonding with Klaus anytime soon, but it's clear that's what Marcel wants, and we'll have to see what's going on there. That definitely is very interesting. But like I said, we are now done with Aurora, and I am ready to move to Cortez, who I don't really know what he's going to bring to the show, but we'll have to see. But like I said, this was definitely more satisfying of a crossover because the Vampire Diaries had 4 scenes with Klaus and Stefan. This had Stefan throughout the episode, which I love seeing. I like seeing Stefan bond with these other characters. I think he worked very well on this show, definitely. Klaus worked well in the Vampire Diaries, but Stefan just worked better here. I don't know what it was. There was just something that worked better. But overall, guys, let me know what you guys saw this episode. Absolutely love this episode. By far best episode of the season. And I will see you guys in my next video, which I think is going to be for the season of Fuller House. I'm almost done with it, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.